My name is Delilah. I'm 29 years old and I live in Houston, Texas. I work as a wedding planner, helping couples celebrate their love while my own marriage was quietly falling apart. My husband Stephen is a lawyer. We met 10 years ago and married just 1 year later. Back then, I believed our love was unbreakable. I trusted him completely. I thought we would grow old together, facing life's challenges side by side. But I was so wrong about him. My younger sister Phoebe means everything to me. When our parents died in a car accident 12 years ago, my world shattered into pieces. I was only 17, and Phoebe was just 10 years old. I had to become her mother, her protector, her entire world. For 8 long years, I worked multiple jobs, sacrificed my own dreams, and gave everything I had to raise her properly. I wanted her to have opportunities I never had. When Phoebe finally left for college in New York, I felt proud. My sacrifices had paid off. She was building her future, and I could finally breathe. 4 years passed quickly. When Phoebe returned home, she had transformed into a beautiful, confident young woman. I was so happy to see her again. But the moment Stephen laid eyes on her, everything changed. He stared at her like she was the only person in the room. His eyes followed her everywhere. He didn't even remember she was my little sister. Something dark and cold settled in my chest that day. I asked him why he was looking at her that way, but he just looked down and said nothing. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. This was my sister and my husband. They would never betray me. But deep down, I knew something terrible was beginning. Stephen became a stranger. He stopped speaking to me with kindness. He barely looked at me anymore. Phoebe started acting distant too, avoiding my eyes whenever we were together. Then, one night, Stephen came home and destroyed me with his words. He accused me of being pregnant with another man's child. The accusation was completely false. I had never been unfaithful, never even thought about another man. I begged him to believe me, to remember the woman he married, but he refused to listen. He looked at me with such hatred that I barely recognized him. Still, like a fool, I kept loving him. One Thursday afternoon, I went to the mall for groceries. What I saw there changed everything forever. Stephen and Phoebe were walking together, holding hands like lovers. My heart stopped. I followed them quietly, praying I was misunderstanding what I was seeing. Then Stephen led her into a jewelry store. Through the window, I watched him slide a ring onto her finger. My husband was proposing to my baby sister, the sister I had raised with my own hands. The world started spinning. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt weak. This wasn't a bad dream. This was my nightmare coming to life. The next day, I found them sitting together in our living room, laughing as if nothing was wrong. I stood in the doorway and said quietly, "My husband and my sister, together in my own house." I looked at Phoebe and asked her if she ever thought about me, about everything I had sacrificed for her, about our parents watching from heaven. She said nothing at first. Then she whispered that she didn't plan it, but Stephen loved her now. I told her she hadn't fallen in love. She had fallen into shame. She hadn't just taken my husband, she had buried her own sister alive. Stephen looked at me coldly and announced that Phoebe would live upstairs from now on. If I wanted to stay, I could live downstairs like a servant. If not, the door was open. Those words killed something inside me. The man I loved was throwing me out of my own life. That night, I couldn't eat or sleep. I kept asking myself what I had done wrong, but I knew the truth. I had trusted the wrong person. Days passed in darkness. Phoebe tried to apologize, but her words meant nothing. Then one night I found her crying on the floor, shaking and broken. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face and said she was sorry. I told her she had destroyed the most sacred bond we had. She had chosen him over everything our parents taught us. The next morning, I packed my bags. Phoebe begged me to stay, saying this was my home and she was the one who should leave. I looked at her and realized something important. Even after everything she did, I still felt her pain. I still loved her as my sister. But I couldn't live in that house anymore. I told her I was leaving, not because she deserved peace, but because I deserved it. Then I walked out forever. Stephen watched me leave without any guilt in his eyes. He was proud of what he had done. In that moment, I understood the truth. He had never loved me. He had never loved Phoebe either. He only loved himself and his power over us. But I knew Phoebe wouldn't last long with him, and I was right. I moved into a small apartment and used my savings to open a salon. Every day I worked hard to rebuild myself. Slowly, I started smiling again. I found pieces of myself I thought were lost forever. Months later, Phoebe appeared at my door. Her clothes were torn and her face was covered in bruises. She collapsed into my arms, crying and begging for forgiveness. Stephen had shown her his true face. He had hurt her the same way he hurt me. She was wrong, terribly wrong, but she was still my sister. I forgave her because holding on to hate would only poison my own heart. Stephen was out of our lives forever, and that was the greatest gift. Now, 5 years later, Phoebe works with me at the salon. We're not perfect, and some days are still hard. But we're happy, we're strong. We survived the worst betrayal and came out together on the other side. I learned that respect is not something you beg for. It's your right. I learned that real love never feels like pain. If someone makes you feel small, they don't deserve you. Forgive yourself for trusting the wrong person. Forgive others if your heart allows it. But never forget your worth. You are stronger than you know, and you deserve a love that heals you, not one that destroys you.